Widows, balls of ghouls, how are we all doing? Today, we're going to be looking at the X-Files and my top 10 monsters of the week. I'm a massive fan of the X-Files. I'm old enough to remember it. The first time round, I was like 12 or 13 when it came out. And on a Sunday when it was premiered on Sky, you'd watch The Simpsons reappearance and then the X-Files. And they were the odd episode that creeped me out when I was young. And obviously I grew up with the show, so it became less scary, but some of the monsters were still incredibly cool. So the rules for this top 10... I'm not going to be covering any of the sort of long-form villains, the guys that were in and out throughout the show's run. So, obviously, the assassin alien with a knife. He's not in here. Cancer Man's not in here because he's not a monster. Well, he is a monster, but he's very human. Just looking at the monsters that did one-offs, and on 2 occasions, they did 2 episodes because the monsters were that cool. So, straight in at number 10 is Donnie Pfaster. Now, Donnie Pfaster is probably one of the more well-known villains in the X-Files because technically he has no supernatural aspects to him. The guy is just a deranged serial killer. But he bathes his victims, he washes them, and he's very softly spoken and stuff, but there's this air of menace behind him. And in doing a little bit of research, he was originally written to be a necrophiliac. However, Fox were like, this is a TV show that goes out at 8, 9 o'clock. Can't have necrophilia in there. So they turned him into a death fetishist, and he's got these weird obsession with hair, fingernails. He hides this by working at a funeral parlor, but once he gets fired from that, then he goes off. Then he goes off the rails. But he becomes obsessed with Scully. And then, obviously, they defeat him the first time, and then he escapes for a second time. And again, his obsession with Scully is still there, and he goes back after her. Fantastic episodes. The actor just pulls off creepy. I've seen him in loads and loads of things. He's a good actor. In at number 9, the Jersey Devil. This was featured in the first season. I believe it was episode 5. So Mulder and Scully look into these cases of cannibalism in New Jersey, but obviously it's Mulder, it's the X-Files, so there's something else behind it. And Mulder puts that these cannibalistic murders are linked to the Jersey Devil, which is a folklore tale. And if I remember right, I read this somewhere, but the Blair Witch was actually very loosely based on the Jersey Devil folklore. So we follow Mulder and Scully trying to track down this sort of missing link, really. And she's basically a throwback woman to almost caveman sort of era. And Mulder sees her as this like missing link between human and animal. She attacks Mulder and is eventually killed. But the episode ends on this sort of cliffhanger, like a lot of the Monster of the Week does, where she has children, and one of the children is seen looking on at their mum's death, so potentially coming back. They don't, but it was a cool cliffhanger. Number 8, the Human Bat. This is from season 8, episode 3, and this is John Doggett's first Monster of the Week episode. Now, I really enjoyed the character of John Doggett. He didn't work so well once Mulder completely disappeared, but while they were searching for Mulder and he was in and out, he worked very, very well. It's just a shame that he wasn't a replacement for Mulder, because X-Files just didn't work without Mulder and Scully in this time period. I think now they're on about doing sort of a reboot or a remake. I hope they don't remake it. I hope it is a reboot and it's just a different pair of FBI agents looking into the old X-Files or newer X-Files. And I genuinely hope that they don't sort of remake it and then we get the same villains, the same monsters. I would like to see them take an all-new take on the X-Files, but almost a continuation in the modern era. But the Human Bat is what it sounds like. You very briefly see him hanging from door frames and stuff when the episode's opening up, murdering old people in attics. It's a very creepy episodes, quite bloodthirsty in places, very enjoyable. The effects on the bat are really well done as well, and the description of him towards the end of the episode is he's neither bat nor human, and basically Doggett and Scully shoot this thing multiple times and it just flies off into the night, meaning it's still out there. And then at number 7, we have the Soul Eater. He was one of the rare types that wasn't really the villain. It was the humans that were the villain of the episode. And this happened a few times. There was an episode with a guy with 2 faces, and there was a Cher soundtrack played all the way through. He was another one where the humans were the villains as opposed to the monster. So the Soul Eater is a monster from the Native American folklore. Mulder seeks out this monster in hopes that he can sort of heal this brain problem that Mulder is getting towards the end of his first tenure in the X-Files. But once Mulder is introduced to this monster of the week, he realizes that this monster is so deformed and hideous is because he's taken on all of the diseases and illnesses of the people he saved. So Mulder tries to kill the monster to put it out of his misery, basically doing it a mercy. Mulder fails, these humans come in to kill it, and John Doggett inadvertently kills the monster whilst trying to protect Mulder. But when the monster dies, his sort of parting gift to Mulder for showing him kindness was to take his brain disease from him. Fantastic episode, really good looking design on the monster of the week. And it's one of those episodes that's really poorly lit, but it works in the favour of this monster. In at number 6, Guy Man. This is one of the later episodes from the show's revival in season 10. This episode is insane. Absolutely insane. It takes the werewolf myth but makes it a lizard, but flips even that on its head, because a man fights a lizard and then the lizard becomes a man by night. He takes a job and he hates his job and he basically doesn't like his human existence. But there's a scene, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you've watched this episode, where he lies to Mulder about his interactions with Scully, and it is possibly one of the hottest episodes of the X-Files ever. Just Google it. Scully and Guy Man. You'll thank me later. This is a far more comedic episode, but it is absolutely brilliant. The guy that plays Guy Man, Rhys Darby, does such a good job of it. His interactions with Mulder at the end are fantastic. And he's like, you know what? I don't want to be human anymore. It sucks. He just strips off in front of Mulder, hugs him and says, I've made my first friend. And then he says he's off to hibernate for another 10,000 years. Great creature design. It's cheesy, but it's meant to be very enjoyable, of probably one of the weakest seasons of the X-Files. And then at number 5, we've got Leonard, Lanny's conjoined twin. This is from season 2, episode 12, and this is one of the more stomach-churning episodes. It's just the noise of the creature. Oh, very nice. So the monster is technically 2 people. You've got Lanny, who's a human with a protruding stomach, but what we don't realise until later on is that this protruding stomach is actually the killer, and it's this sort of underdeveloped human fetus, but it's able to move really quick and detach itself from its brother. And he's committing murders around this travelling carnival with the freak show on there. Lanny knows his brother is the murderer, but he tries to protect him, but he's also feeling guilt. But the creature design is absolutely fantastic. Very creepy episode. Very, icky looking episode as well. Very, very good. Check it out. And then at number 4, we've got another Leonard. And this one is Leonard Betts. Now, Leonard Betts has the ability of a reptile. So he can regrow limbs. In fact, he regrows its head. And it is disgusting, but in the best way. Now, technically, he's not that much of a villain because he's a paramedic and he feeds off cancer to regrow his own organs and limbs, keep himself regenerating. So anyone with the cancer disease is the perfect victim for this guy. And it just so happens at the time, Scully has got cancer that she was given, obviously, by the government to keep her off the X-Files. Really good episode, check that one out. And then at number 3, we've got Mrs. Peacock. Now, really, I should include the whole Peacock family in this because the design of all of them is really good. The episode is fantastic. You know, Mulder goes to look for this missing kids, finds blood on a makeshift baseball pitch, and they're warned not to go near this house with this family in. And obviously they go in, the house is booby-trapped, people are killed. Really, really good. But then when they discover Mrs. Peacock, it is hideous. She's deformed to the point where she doesn't have fully formed limbs, so she lives So she lives on like this frame with wheels on it under a bed, and she directs the family on who to kill, where to kill, how to kill. Oh, it's just horrible. The entire thing is horrible, but in proper horrific horror episode way. Really, really enjoyed this episode. And again, it's one of those grimy, horrible looking things. Kind of a throwback if the Hills Have Eyes and the X-Files sort of met in the middle. Loved this episode. So, number 2. Now, this was really difficult for me of what was going to be number 1 and number 2. And these could be interchangeable depending on my mood. But in at number 2 for me today is the Flukeman. This is from Season 2, Episode 2, called The Host. And this is probably everybody else's favourite monster, is the Flukeman, the monster of the week, because the design of this thing, the way it's attacking in the sewers, the sort of sucker mouth, it's kind of like a tapeworm and human hybrid. And because it lives in the sewers, you can almost smell the episode. It's really dark, it's really damp, it's really just horrible feeling, looking. You can borderline smell it. But what's worse is when this thing bites you, it infects you with its own larvae, or transfers its own larvae into its victims. Obviously, Mulder and Scully eventually defeat the Flukeman and send it back out to sea. And this was like the first point, as young as I was, that I was aware that Scully was seeing too many things and still not believing. Before we get at number 1, some honourable mentions that on any other day of the week could have made it into this top 10. The episode Darkness Falls with the little green insects. That actually scared me the first time I watched it. I didn't want to turn my light off at night. It was creepy as shit. So these little fluorescent green little bugs, and they cocoon people and feed on them. But they can only do it in the dark. So Mulder and Scully are in a race against time, against darkness falling, but then the generator running out of fuel. And it keeps sort of the adrenaline rushing. And then towards the end of the episode, you don't know if Mulder and Scully have survived it. Really, really cool episode. We've got the Quagmire, which is kind of like a Nessie-esque episode, but it's killing people. That's also a really cool episode with a really cool idea behind the monster. And my last honourable mention would be Lord of the Flies. This is like a coming-of-age story where a guy kisses a girl, but then something comes out of his mouth and bites her. So at number 1, my all-time favourite monster of the week. He was so good that they brought back for a further episode. And this is Victor Tooms, or Eugene Victor Tooms. He features in Season 1, Episode 3, Squeeze, and Season 1, Episode 21, Tooms. Tooms is played by Doug Hitchinson. You'll recognise him from The Green Mile, Punisher, Warzone. Really good actor. Tooms is like this genetic mutant who can stretch his body. Think like Fantastic Four Reed Richards, but more painful and slimy looking. But Tooms murders a specific amount of people, eats their livers in order for him to hibernate, because he kills every 30 years. So every 30 years he comes back, kills a specific amount of victims, then he hibernates he like salivates this yellow stuff onto paper and he builds like a wasp nest to hibernate. Disgusting. But he's basically built up as a regular serial killer, but you don't know how he's killing, and this stretching ability is how he's getting in through letterboxes, small chimneys, bizarre little air vents. And the reason Mulder and Scully are able to track this guy is he takes tokens from his victims, and he goes after Scully and takes I believe it's a crucifix, and Mulder recognizes it and recognizes that Scully is in danger. So Mulder obviously saves Scully. They put Tooms in prison. You see him building his nest. And then the guard posts his food, and you see him look at the letterbox, and you're like, shit. He can fit out of that. He's going to escape. Obviously he does. He comes back. He goes back after Scully. And whilst it looks like Tooms died at the end of the second episode to feature him, he's squashed by an elevator. There's still a bit of a question. Could Tooms have contorted his body in a way to have survived it, meaning that in 2023, he would have been on the hunt again? Found this guy and this episode so creepy. It genuinely scared me. I was only like 12 or 13 when this episode came out. It really, really creeped me out. And this is one of the first X-Files villains to get his own little DVD box set. It was the two-part episodes came in a Tooms box set. It was really cool. I did have it. I don't think I've still got it, but he is my all-time favourite X-Files villain. So, let me know your thoughts on the comment section down below. Did I miss any of your favourite monsters of the week? I know there's the little guy that travels in people's stomachs and then he eats them and stuff. That episode was disgusting. I probably should have included him. Then there would have been so many to include. I'd love to know what your monsters of the week were. And if you've got the time, put your top 10 in the comment section down below. Hope you enjoyed that. More X-Files stuff will be coming on this channel, as well as the usual horror content. Much love to you all. Beardo out.